In this video, we're going to look at pelvic floor muscle strengthening exercises because we have to. Because there are women who have had kids who are peeing themselves when they laugh, and there are guys who are post-prostate who are suffering too, and there are kids wetting the bed. So pelvic floor strength is an ageless issue that wreaks havoc on the confidence and self-esteem of the people who suffer from it, making them stay in and maybe miss out on life and also feel bad about themselves. Of course, there are products on the market. This leaflet came through my door a few days ago, but it's a continuity product. And what I mean is that this is something that you have to buy every week or every month. It costs you money, and it probably doesn't support the environmental issues that the planet faces, and it probably doesn't solve the problem that you have, certainly not completely. But there is something that we can do. Neil Fellows here from Total Wellness Club. If you want to get healthy and fit and stay healthy and fit and do it in a way that's both natural and unique to you, please join us by subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell to get notified of all of our latest uploads. In this episode, we're looking at pelvic floor muscle strengthening exercises, and joining me is Jana Danielson, all the way from Canada. I'm fortunate right now that I'm not affected by the issues that I've mentioned, but I do know people who do suffer. And according to Jana Danielson, there's something that we can do. She's developed a product called the Gooch Ball for guys and the Cooch Ball for women. And I wanted to try this out and see how it went. And I've also asked Jana to come along and tell us a bit more about the issues about pelvic floor muscles and how they work, and to tell us about the pelvic floor muscle strengthening exercises that we can do. So Jana, tell us what kind of negative pelvic floor muscle problems or symptoms people suffer with.
So, Neil, this is such a loaded question, because not many people, when you think about wellness or fitness, right? You think about your glutes having, like strong glutes or, toned legs, or what we don't realize is that there's muscles inside of our body that we don't really see. And that's where the pelvic floor has this, it's almost like this enigma, right? Is people don't want to talk about it because we've been told that there's dysfunction that's going to happen as you age or if you choose to become a mom. And so when I would teach my Pilates classes and start really educating about the pelvic floor, because you know what? It is a part of our core. And so many people feel like their core are their abdominals, but it doesn't end there. The core is just a part of it. So whether you are, coughing or sneezing or laughing and peeing a little bit, whether you have really chronically tight hips or low back, even things like cold, tingly feet, or if you're prone to shin splints, men with erectile dysfunction, all of these, let's call them symptoms or occurrences, have roots in, no pun intended, but have roots in the pelvic floor. And if we really want to impact our health and wellness, we have to really start inside the body and understand the function before we can, take control and understand that movement is absolutely critical to keeping this part of our body well.
So what are the causes of pelvic floor muscle problems?
Yeah. So there's many. Okay. And sometimes we think of the common ones, right? So for women after they've had babies, or women that are, in menopause, you might think like, oh, well, it's because they had a baby, those muscles are going to be dysfunctional, or they're in menopause and there's all these hormonal changes, but there's so much more than that. So even our posture, our basic posture, if you think back 10 or 20 years ago, I think of like my dad when I was growing up, he always wore his wallet in his back pocket, right? So think about all those years for men where they sat around with their wallet in their back pocket. Their pelvis was actually asymmetrical, right? So the bony structure of the body was changing. Think of the pelvic floor like a bowl or a sling that goes from the right side of the body to the left, the front to the back, and then two diagonals like a letter X. That bowl, like that hammock, is as soon as we change the structure of the bones, that hammock is not going to be balanced. So things like posture, we sit, right? We've heard like sitting is the new smoking. People sit with their pelvis curled under. We're not absorbing gravity in the way we should. So simple postures or habits can absolutely impact the function of our pelvic floor.
Just as you're talking, I've actually shifted my posture about 2 or 3 times.
Well, you know what? And you might have some of your audience being like, okay, well, what should we be feeling? So here, let me give you a little tip. We all have those bony bones in our butt. They're called your ischial tuberosities, okay? So if you just move the flesh of your glutes away, and when you're sitting in your chair, think of those bony butt bones like your feet. You want to be sitting on top of them, not behind them, slumped, not in front of them with a big arch in our back, right? Because again, you're not going to be absorbing the gravity properly. But if you are someone who through your work is required to be sedentary a lot of the day, we just can't be like, well, I have to sit for my job. No, we can train our body to really be functional while we're sitting. So when you feel those sit bones connected to your chair, think of your spine growing up toward the ceiling, and don't get in that kind of harsh military posture, but there is a sense of length, because you know what, you guys, it's not just where our bones are. As soon as we lose space, the pelvic floor, like our organs get heavier, we take space away from the core of our body. And now all of a sudden, digestion is impacted, circulation is impacted, elimination is impacted. So the pelvic floor, you know, has a big job. It holds those organs up inside of us. It's functional when we sit down on the toilet or stand up or pick up a box of groceries, or you know, hit the golf ball down the fairway. The pelvic floor is, by virtue of where it's located, is functional. So it's like any other muscle. If you're not going to use your arms properly or your legs properly, those muscles are going to start to atrophy. They're going to start to die. They're going to start to suffocate. It's the exact same concept with the pelvic floor.
Yeah, you've maybe alluded to this a little bit already. I just wanted to ask you, like, who does this affect? I mean, is it just women who have had children? Is it men who have had the prostate removed?
Yeah.
Who does it affect?
Yes, and yes. And you know what? It impacts more people than we think. So men post-prostate cancer, absolutely, right? Because where the prostate is located, it actually serves as a bit of a support for the bladder. When that's taken away, there is going to be, you know, the potential for some incontinence. But it goes beyond the, you know, the postnatal, post-prostate cancer, you know, menopausal men and women. I have had clients who come to me with their 12-year-old son who is still wetting the bed, who is very anxious and just holds, right? And so even at a very young age, our pelvic floor can become dysfunctional. Young dancers, even like think of the performers in a dance like river dance, where they are doing, they're very stable in their upper body, they're moving their lower body very fast. We see people in that world. We see, a lot of athletes have pelvic floor issues. And so it's not an age and a mom thing like we've been taught. Anybody at any age can start to improve their pelvic floor health, which then plugs into just basic function of the body in a very simple way. And that's what can be very frustrating for like a movement professional like me, where you have people that think it's a medical issue, they can do nothing about it, and it's just like it's their sentence for the rest of their life. I had a woman come to me that said she had stopped traveling because she had to make so many frequent bathroom breaks. It was embarrassing. And we got her going with some pelvic floor work, and she booked a trip to New York City with her sister and had the time of her life. So it impacts us in so many ways. And in 9 out of 10 cases, pelvic floor issues in men and women are movement issues, not medical issues. That's huge.
That's really interesting to hear. I mean, just thinking about this as well. I mean, you mentioned at your gym that you help people to to understand this. But I've been in gyms before. I've never met a personal trainer who said to me, let's do some exercise on your pelvic floor muscles. So the question I want to ask you, how is it possible to build or is it possible to build sort of pelvic floor muscles in the same way that you would develop another muscle? I mean, obviously we don't want big bulging, pelvic floor muscles like the bicep, but how does it work?
Yeah. So I'm going to give you a quick anatomy lesson here.
Yeah.
So I want you to visualize your core as a cylinder. Okay. It's a cylinder. It has a 360 degree, the cylindrical part, and then it has a floor and a ceiling. All right. So here's what's really critical, and people don't understand this. The pelvic floor, as the floor of our core, has a partner muscle that lives right above it called the diaphragm. Now, the diaphragm is our main muscle of respiration. And here's key. I want your audience to know, if there is one thing that they take away from this interview, it's this. Our ability to breathe using our diaphragm is a very large muscle. It looks like an umbrella when you open up an umbrella, or like a mushroom cap. Okay. It basically domes in our rib cage. When we learn how to breathe diaphragmatically, because the diaphragm, as the roof of the core, is partner to the pelvic floor, which is the floor of the core, as soon as you start to get function through breath, the pelvic floor is going to start to respond.
Wow.
Okay, so that's key. So how do you improve pelvic floor strength? You start with diaphragmatic breathing. That is key. Without that component, it's not even physiologically possible. Now, here's the thing to understand, is that a lot of the population is already too tight. Okay, they're hypertonic. It's like a brick wall. They need to learn how to release, because let's be honest, a muscle that's functional can work and it can rest. And it needs to be able to do that on demand, right? So if we are, again, picking up a big box, we need our core to work, our low back muscles, our arms as we pick the box up. But when we put the box down, you're not going to stay contracted through those muscles. Your muscles are going to rest. Yeah. So when you are looking at pelvic floor health, you need to, and this is why I'm a huge proponent of pelvic floor physiotherapy, because those professionals are experts in this area. Whether your pelvic floor is like that rock wall or it's too loose, there are solutions. You have to learn how to strengthen in the case where there is no movement. And in the case where there's there's just tight, you have to learn how to release. So the function, it's not a one size fits all. It's where do you live on that spectrum of pelvic floor function, and what do you need? The solution is a little bit customized based on what your current situation in your body is.
Yeah. So tell us a bit more about some of the pelvic floor muscle strengthening exercises that we could do.
Okay. So if you need to strengthen, so I'm going to go through the visualization for men and for women. Okay. So first of all, when you breathe diaphragmatically, when you inhale through your nose, you're really expanding, like think about expanding your rib cage, breathing down into your belly button. That's the inhale phase. At that point, the pelvic floor is resting. Okay. When you exhale out of your mouth, and I'm going to use a Pilates kind of diaphragmatic breath because that's where I live. You inhale through your nose, your diaphragm is filling up, your lungs get out of the way because there's no room, your pelvic floor is at rest. When you exhale, in a female body, this is the visualization I use. It's like picking up a grape with your vagina. So you don't want to squash that grape. Yeah. And guys, for you, it's like walking into a lake or the ocean and the water gets about mid-thigh and the water's a little bit cold. So there's that lifting sensation of the boys, right? The testicles kind of lift. Yeah. That's a pelvic floor contraction in a man's body. Okay. Yeah. So it's the lift. Now, the lift is one phase. Remember, we exhaled and we lifted. As we inhale, we bring that elevator back down to ground floor. So as we exhale out of our mouth, we lift. And as we exhale, we lower. Now, here's where what I like to teach is beyond the Kegel. Okay, I think we've all probably heard of Kegel exercises where you squeeze and release and you squeeze and release. That is fine if you've just had a baby and you want to make sure that you still have muscles, down there between your legs. But here's where the Kegel can fall short, is that when you are strengthening your body, if someone came to my studio and said, Jana, I've got a wedding coming up, I want more tone in my arms, I would not say to them, make me a bicep and flex and let go, flex and let go, flex and let go, right? I would work through a range of motion with a weight or a band to create a resistance, right?
Yeah.
So a Kegel, if we're squeezing and releasing, like squeezing our butt and then releasing, we're not actually teaching strength, we're teaching tension, which is two very different things. Okay. So that's why I like to use the elevator or picking up the grape and putting it down, or walking into the lake and then walking out, because it has to have a range of motion up. Yeah. And then it needs the matching range of motion back down to rest. That's really key.
Yeah. So how does breathing then impact the function or the dysfunction in most cases of the pelvic floor?
Yeah. So think about if we take away space from our core. So, one of the trends lately, you see them all over different social media platforms, those for women, those waist trainers, right? Where it's like, think about like a corset, like, Marie Antoinette, where, getting pulled into her dress and making the shape of the body. What happens when we take space away from the waist? The organs have to either go up or down, right? So we breathe very shallowly. People who have had trauma in their life, people who are a little higher on the anxiety scale, we actually start breathing. I call them my fish breathers. They breathe with secondary muscles in the neck called the scalenes and the sternocleidomastoids. So the body is so brilliant that if we're not accessing the diaphragm to breathe, the brain is like, oh, okay, he's not using his diaphragm. Let's send his breath into his neck. So now we use these little muscles in our neck to breathe. We're not firing our pelvic floor at all. And all we're actually doing, like, how many of you go to your massage therapist and you have lots of neck, jaw, maybe headaches, and you feel so good for 36 hours and then everything gets tight again? It's because we have this pattern. We're asking muscles that hold this bowling ball on our spine to also breathe for us. So breathing and the pelvic floor are like directly interrelated. They are mutually connected. You cannot have pelvic floor function without proper breathing. And it really is as simple as that.
That's fascinating. I mean, I'm learning more about the internal workings of our body than I think I've ever learned, probably in any lessons I ever had at school, for sure.
Oh, thank you.
So how does this muscle group have a direct relation? Because the things that we've talked about, the symptoms that we've talked about, I can imagine, you mentioned the lady who hadn't traveled for quite some time. I imagine that was because of confidence. So talk to me a bit about how that can affect people as they show up in the world.
Yep. And you really, you hit the nail on the head there, Neil. Like, confidence becomes drastically impacted. And part of it is the messaging that we hear or we see in magazines or on TV, right? We are told, the ads show women with graying hair in their adult diapers, but they're newly designed, right? They're designed to move with you. And so we believe that we have no other choice, right? So confidence. And then, I also want to touch a little bit on the sensuality of the pelvic floor. The pelvic floor is a very sensual muscle in a male's body and in a female's body. When the pelvic floor in a man's body is too tight, there is a lack of blood flow into the penis. It's as simple as that. Yeah. So much, and this is what breaks my heart, is because there's millions of men around this world who feel like their body doesn't work for them anymore. Relationships break up, their confidence drastically is impacted negatively. because they think that medically there's something wrong with them. They can't perform in the bedroom. They're not sensual or sexual anymore. And like I said, in most cases, this is a fitness issue. 2 or 3 pelvic floor physiotherapy treatments to release that muscle will get the blood flow into the penis. Like it is very, there's function, there's confidence, there's sensuality. And for all these reasons, and that's why I was so grateful that you allowed me to, to have this virtual stage and share it with you, because that's what my, my passion and my purpose is, getting this message out that we actually do have a lot of control over this part of our body. And yes, depending on how long you've had your dysfunction, there's various levels of prolapse in a woman's body. Can it be completely fixed like it was, 50 years ago? No, but can it be improved? Absolutely. And it takes no money, really. Breath is all, like, air is around us. It's just really understanding how to properly use that to to better yourself. And the outcomes are just endless, right? It's enjoying going out for walks again. Like I always, any kind of sport that you love to play that maybe you've lost confidence with because you've had to put on some sort of a urinary blocking tool, and then the sensuality part.
Yeah. You have a product called the Cooch Ball for women and the Gooch Ball for guys, and I've had the pleasure of trying that. Tell us a little bit about the product.
Yeah. So what I wanted to do was create a product that men and women could use external, so it's non-invasive. I wanted it to be simple and not take a lot of time to use, but I wanted people to feel changes really quickly. So I created, like you said, it's a co-branded product, Cooch Ball for women, Gooch Ball for men. It's a 5-inch ball. I'm going to have it right here with me. I always have it within arm's reach, right? So here's the concept of the ball. The ball comes with an educational series of videos, because I feel like education is power. When you sit on the ball, it's very similar to if you were to take a foam roller and roll out the sides of your legs, your IT bands. Like a lot of runners will do that because they have knee issues. It's a way to bring blood flow back to the area. Now, here's the thing. Blood flow is queen or king in a female or male body. When there is an abundance of blood flow, nutrient-rich, oxygen-rich blood, the muscles and the fascial tissue just eat that up, and they can't help but flourish, right? Think of a plant that you don't water for 4 or 6 weeks. What does that plant look like? The leaves have lost their vigor. The soil is cracked. It does not look healthy. That's exactly what happens in our body. And my challenge was, how do I get blood flow to the pelvic floor? If we're going to neuromuscularly change the function, we've got to create the environment. Well, the Cooch and Gooch Ball create the environment. So what you basically do is you sit on the ball, on the floor, on a chair, on your couch, on a mattress. I always suggest using the ball about 2/3 full. You can use it completely full. It's not unsafe. It's a better experience for your body when there's a little bit of give to it. Now, it's a patented tool. I've created some very unique inner workings of the ball so that it works with the body. And as you sit on the ball and you watch the videos and I take you through the diaphragmatic breathing process, as you're sitting, the weight of your body on the ball creates the release. It creates the opportunity for the blood flow to get to the tissues. Then the breathing component creates the strength. So it's kind of like a buy one, get one. You're getting the release by sitting on the ball, but then you're retraining the function by picking up the grape and putting it down through the diaphragmatic breathing. I need to tell you that it's not overly comfortable when you start. And it is a function of the biofeedback. So the more discomfort you experience, and maybe you start with 30 seconds, not 3 minutes. But the more discomfort you feel on the ball, it's directly related to the health of the pelvic floor. So as you commit to this and you're consistent day after day, that little bit of that ouch factor is going to start to decrease as those tissues start to get healthier with the blood flow and the breathing. So that's the beauty of it, is you're actually getting that biofeedback. You can feel the changes as they are occurring.
Now I can relate to this because I was on holiday in India, and I was at an Ayurvedic retreat, and I went for a massage every day. The first 3 days I was in agony. On day 3, they could do what they like. It didn't matter anymore. And I guess that's a similar scenario in that the blood flow is happening.
Is exactly the same thing, Neil. Yeah. Exactly. And that's what when I said before, like one of my positive self-talks that I use is the body is brilliant, and the body is brilliant. But you have to be the alpha. You have to take it on the journey, because sometimes when the body leads the way, it kind of goes off the trail a little bit, right? And then we become, right? I see people in my studio, they become their hip bursitis or their arthritis or their back pain. They identify with that. And, the mind and the body and the spirit are just so interrelated, but the pragmatic, I love the Pilates environment. And that's really what drove me toward creating this product, is I wanted it to be simple and pragmatic. It had to make sense for people. They could throw it in their suitcase, their gym bag, wherever it is, and use it. So my favorite story so far is a woman from New York City that called me one day in the summertime. And she said, Jana, my husband is turning 89 years old. And for his birthday, I want to buy him a Gooch Ball, because in her words, he's not as spunky as he used to be. And so we had this amazing conversation, and she was just, she was so excited to get the ball because they were both going to use it. And I was like, this is why I did what I did in creating the product, because at 86 and 89, to be able to gift the spunkiness that they were looking for in their relationship, I was like, I love everything about it. So
that's fantastic. Love that story. Yeah, thanks for sharing that. What I will do, Jana, is I will include a link below the video and also in the description, so that people can find out more about the product, come and buy the product, get those videos you talked about, and enjoy it. Having experienced it myself, one of the things that I found surprising actually about it was the actual, obviously you could do breathing exercises, step one, I guess, but actually having the ball brought attention to it. Now, having used the ball, I've loaned it to a couple of people as well, so they could trial it, because I wanted to get their opinions on it as well. And since I've loaned it out, I've forgotten to do the exercises. Whereas when I had the ball 3 weeks solid every day, up to 3 minutes, I did the exercises. It just became part of my routine. Finish off doing exercise, my normal exercise, grab the ball, sit on the ball, do it. Now the ball's not there, I forget. So it actually brought attention. So that was one of the things I found in using it. Jana, I really do appreciate your time today with this interview and sharing everything you have with us about the pelvic floor and the muscles and how we can improve them and strengthen them. It's time for me to go get on the ball. I'll see you in the next video.